Hey everyone, I'm Jaz. I'm a freelance UX and product strategist, and I'm currently working for Auckland Council, where at the moment we are working on problems such as the IA categorisation of eels in the toilet. This little green one here, okay. Okay, we'll just, how do we get this working? There we are, cool. Okay, when I first started out in design, I wanted to be creative, like an ideas person, But I soon realised I was actually a different kind of thinker, a more pragmatic thinker that always needs to know why things are the way they are, and I'm highly motivated by results. I now see design as a vehicle for the execution of strategy and believe that these things together are what makes a product successful. Getting closer to strategy has been the most fulfilling part of my career to date. And what matters to me most is whether things actually work and whether we actually make the change that we set out to make, and that the value of design thinking is evident. I'm just going to stand. Try the other hand. Okay. Okay. Good one. No, that's gone back. Okay.
I didn't say try the other button.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about the aspects of product strategy that relate to design and how you can be a more strategic and ultimately more valuable designer. It took me a while to understand strategy properly, and in part because around me it was often very poorly defined or often completely absent, and you may recognise that in some of your workplaces. Hopefully by the end of this you'll be able to recognise whether a good strategy is in place or not. So what is strategy? By definition, it's simple. A plan of action designed to achieve an overall goal. But as with most things, the devil's in the detail. A strategy is not just a list of actions. It's not a backlog or a roadmap or a set of goals. It's many things together, designed to move an organisation and its customers from a current state to a more desirable future state. And usually this means a more profitable state. A strategic plan answers four big questions. Where are we now? Where are we going? What do we need to do to get there? And how will we know when we've made it? Let's take a look at where strategy fits into the scheme of things, particularly around the time horizons. So a company's mission sits at the top level. It's the change the company wants to make to the world. And this doesn't change very often, certainly not once product market fit has been achieved, but it's the thing that gets the CEO out of bed every morning and hopefully the rest of the company too. This mission might have a time horizon of 10 to 20 years. A product vision describes a future state, the change a company wants to bring about for its users and the industry. This might have a time horizon of maybe 3 to 5 years before it is reviewed. A product strategy is a plan to reach a goal that will get you closer to that vision. A strategic plan might cover 1 to 2 years, maybe less if it's a startup. And product goals are what the strategy is aiming for and how you measure your progress. So I'm just going to define some of these key elements and then I'll give you some examples. So a strategy is not just a set of actions, it's the reason those actions have been decided on. These actions, or tactics, are a way of achieving the objectives, and the objectives are what you need to do to achieve your goals. A roadmap or backlog are just artefacts that describe the sequence of tactics that you might undertake once you've worked out what your objectives actually are. So the difference between objectives and goals can be a bit confusing, right? So the way I like to think about it is a goal is something that you score, like a goal in a sports game, and the objectives are the plays that you need to make to get there. I've been lucky enough to work on some really successful products where I got to see the impact of strategic design play out at high speed. The one I'm going to talk about today is Tend Health. So Tend is New Zealand's first digital-first primary healthcare provider, so that's GP services. Designing Tend from scratch was a really good example of helping form a strategy to move the company and its users from a current state to a future state. Tend's mission is to make Aotearoa the healthiest nation in the world. Their product vision, healthcare, anytime, anywhere. The main goal for launch was to gain a certain number of enrolled patients who preferred online consultations. So what did the strategy need to be? The current state was in-person appointments at physical clinics, maybe Monday to Friday between 9 to 5 as the norm. And if you needed medication, you'd get a piece of paper that you had to take somewhere else to get filled. Our goals were to shift this norm to a place where the majority of consults could happen online, and some wouldn't need to happen at all as we made more use of secure messaging and integrated medication management. Now, to deliver a hybrid GP service, we needed to build certain features. They had to build clinics, for one thing, because you can't deliver full-service care without them. But for the app, we had to build features like appointment booking, video consults, e-prescriptions, and messaging. But those things were just the tactics. Our objectives ended up being something quite different. So how do you work out what the objectives of your product strategy should be? There are many things that go into the formation of a strategy, and I'm not going to go into all of them in detail. But the important bit here is that a strategy is born from the context of the current situation plus a magic ingredient. And that magic ingredient is your insights. A good strategy is based on good research. As well as studying the market and competitors, we need to, of course, understand our users, their needs, their existing mental models and behaviours. But research data on its own doesn't really mean anything, right? It's like, what matters is what it tells you in the context of the current situation up against your product vision and your product goals. So to make your research count, you have to turn it into something actionable insights that will help move the company from the current state to that future state that everyone is gunning for. The way that insights inform a strategy is that they reveal the challenge that must be overcome, the change that needs to happen for the product vision to be realised. And if there isn't a significant challenge to overcome, you might find that not a lot is going to change. You'll build stuff, ship some features, but the end result might not have enough impact to make a dent in the current state. The more disruptive a product is, the greater the change between the current state and the future state. So for Tend, my research exposed the challenge that we had to overcome in order to reach our goals. We found that people thought that online consults were only good for one-off situations, emergencies, perhaps, and they didn't think they were any good for their children. People thought Tend was an app they could find their own doctor in because they'd only ever experienced apps like Manage My Health. And most of all, nobody understood how enrolling works. Now, I'm going to have to explain this a little bit because it's something I didn't understand at all when I started this project, and it was the biggest hurdle we had to overcome in terms of adoption. So in New Zealand, when you go to the doctor, the cost of your appointment is subsidised by the government, but only with the GP you're enrolled with. So if you want to go to another one, you'll be going as a casual patient, and the cost of that appointment will be approximately twice the price. But nobody really understands this. And then when you tell them, as they told me, that you can only be enrolled with one GP at a time, it's like, oh. So it turns out that most people are really not keen to change their doctor to try some new fandangled app that nobody's heard of. Some people really didn't care or weren't that wedded to their doctor, but for a lot of people, particularly parents or people with ongoing health conditions, it was a pretty big deal. So these insights informed our objectives, the challenge we needed to overcome. As well as all the other features we needed to build, we had to first build awareness of a different model of care, explain how Tend worked, build trust in the service, and explain how enrolling worked, which was actually pretty hard to do in a tiny app screen. And getting all these things right was harder and more important than the rest of the features we had to build, like online booking and that kind of stuff. We spent more time on the enrolment flow than probably all the other features put together. It was like the longest sign-up I've ever had to design. It involved taking a 2-page PDF from the Ministry of Health that you weren't allowed to take a single thing out of, and trying to turn it into something that didn't suck. Yeah, and it was like, who was going to do this? We're asking for your date of birth and your address and your this and your that and whatever, and people are like, I just want to go to the doctor. Our booking flow was slick and simple, but getting people past the stage where they had to choose a price, which just should have been such a simple decision, but was really complicated, was a huge challenge. In the end, it was the little details and all the explaining that got us where we needed to go. So I have never in my life written and tested so much copy so many times for a single app, but we had a huge education challenge on our hands. And what got us over the line in the end was a really highly polished UI design. This was healthcare, and people needed to trust us, and we knew that the average MVP was not going to cut it. So shout out to Bennett for the amazing UI design and Joe Carrington for our beautiful custom illustrations. We had to explain in an interactive way, like every detail about how Tend worked. More copy, as I said, than any app should have. But I tested and redesigned and rewrote and tested over and over and over again till I figured out just the right level of information of what people needed to know. And every decision I made was about trying to shift people's entrenched mental models from where they were then to this future we wanted them to join us in. So when you're designing strategically, every decision needs to be linked back to those objectives. The goals must be reached for the company to make money and ultimately for you to still have a job. Designing strategically requires focus, knowing what the critical business problems really are and being laser focused on solving them. You need great insights, understanding the challenge you need to overcome to reach that product vision, and effective actions, making sure that everything you do is truly important to the change that needs to happen. You need to fall in love with the problem and not the solution. Always start with why, know what success looks like, and work backwards from there to understand what obstacles are in the way that you're going to have to, those hurdles you're going to have to get your user over. It's important to understand how a business makes money. This is known as the value stream. You need to understand the product, the pricing, and all the reasons why they are like they are to make really good design decisions. Rise to the challenge that the product strategy presents, and this is where you can make a really big impact. If you're a researcher, your focus might be more on discovering that challenge and helping form the objectives. If you're a writer, you need to give the users the information, motivation, and inspiration they need to change their behaviour. And as a designer, your design cannot just be beautiful and usable, it must overcome the challenge that the product strategy presents. For every design decision you make, you need to be able to say, I designed it this way because it will meet this objective, or that objective, or this is going to help us reach our goal. Good strategy is all about product trade-offs. All about trade-offs. So a good product manager's job is to say no to anything that doesn't fit into the strategy or won't get everyone closer to those goals. So it's really hard to hear from someone else sometimes that your idea is not valuable, but it's better if you can work that out for yourself before you put your heart and soul into it. It's important not to get lost in the details or stuck in the now. Keep the big picture in sight. Things take time to build, so great product strategy aims to overshoot the now to land at the right place in the future. There's a really good allegory for this in Ryan Rumsey's ebook, Business Thinking for Designers. Trigger warning here, tornadoes. You know those crazy people who chase tornadoes? Well, they don't chase the tornado. They drive like crazy to where the tornado is going to be and hope that they'll meet it. So one of the best examples I remember of seeing this play out was good old Netflix, when it was still a DVD mail order service. I'm showing my age there. And I'll never forget the day in 2007 maybe, and I saw a beta of their Watch Now service, and I was like, oh wow. Now, there was no way that was going to be a good time on my low-ball ADSL connection at the time, but I knew what was coming, they knew what was coming, and that tornado was high-speed, affordable internet. So as well as really keeping your sights on the big picture, you've got to get excited about results, and I can't emphasise this enough. Understand your objectives and your goals, what the success measures look like, and how they'll be measured, and you'll be able to make more valuable design decisions. A well-formed strategy is well communicated, well executed and well measured, with incremental results made available to everyone so you can see how you're going. If it isn't, start asking questions. Ask questions about the strategy. Ask for clarification on the objectives, the goals, and why the tactics are important. If it's not well communicated, there's actually a really good opportunity there for you to help communicate it better. Some of the most successful companies I've worked in put a lot of time into visually communicating the strategy to everybody so that everybody was reminded every day of where we were going and why. So if you don't know what you would put in that poster, go back and keep asking the right questions. Well, I hope this has got you thinking about how you can bring more value to your organisation and ultimately command a higher price for your work. Focus your mahi on understanding and overcoming the challenge that the product strategy presents and get excited about results. You'll be more valuable as a designer and quite possibly more fulfilled. Good luck with finding and smashing your next challenge. Thank you.